husband works here, so could you please call him for me? I headed to the hospital where my husband Andrew works, clutching my arm that was throbbing with intense pain. I explained the situation to the nurse at the reception, but received an unexpected response.
Which doctor's wife are you?
My name is Julie Miller. I'd like to see my husband, Dr. Andrew Miller.
There is no doctor by that name here.
Before coming here, I had been in a car accident. On my way back from shopping, carrying a lot of bags, a truck came up from behind and hit me. My arm smashed hard against the side mirror, sending a jolt of pain through it. I could feel that there was a clear fracture. While I was in agony, the truck driver stopped for a moment, looked at me, and then drove off. I recognized that face. It was Andrew's mistress. That woman. Could she possibly be seeking revenge on me? I took a photo of the hit-and-run driver's license plate with my phone and vowed to get back at the mistress. So, I decided to go to the hospital where Andrew claimed to work and show him my current situation. But Andrew was not employed at this hospital. Excuse me, did you say Julie Miller earlier?
Yes, that's right.
You're Andrew's wife, correct? A different nurse came out and spoke to me. I was stunned by what she said, and a grand plan for revenge against Andrew began to take shape. My name is Julie, I'm 29 years old, and I've had several relationships in the past. But usually, the people I fell for were the quiet types who couldn't handle my personality, and we ended up breaking up. One day, while waiting to meet a friend, a stranger approached me. That person was Andrew. We met by chance, and his cheerful, easygoing personality attracted me. Having only dated quiet types before, this relationship was unusual for me. He was a great conversationalist, always telling interesting stories. Our dates were always fun, and before I knew it, I was smitten with him. Julie, your hairstyle really suits you. It matches your vibe and is so cute. He would compliment me like this. I was over the moon with this encounter. Every time we went on a date, I would tell him how much I liked him. I was completely infatuated. I'm about 5 years older than you, Julie. Do you really love me? About 6 months into our relationship, he started saying things like this. He seemed concerned about our age difference, but 5 years was within my acceptable range, so I didn't mind. I don't mind at all. I love you. Really? Then, will you marry me? He proposed to me then. I was surprised by the unexpected development, but since I loved him deeply at the time, I accepted the proposal without hesitation. We decided to report our marriage properly and have a wedding ceremony once things settled down, as our parents lived far away. Andrew worked as a doctor in a hospital, and I was an employee at a factory. Because his income was good, I was considering switching to part-time and talked to my company about it. Manager, I need to talk to you. With the changes in my family situation, I'd like to reduce my working hours. Is it possible to work part-time? It's possible, but we're short on staff right now, so we'd prefer you stay as a full-time employee if possible. We'll try to adjust your hours, and if we can move you to a part-time contract, we will. Is that okay? Understood. I'll try to continue working overtime as much as possible, but I'll need to leave early more often, so thank you for your understanding. Interactions with the company were also progressing. Thinking about what would happen if we had children in the future, I thought it was a safe choice. So, I thought it would be better to deal with it early. I started taking action with that in mind. After getting married, we moved into a new apartment. For now, I decided to save money in this cheap apartment and prepare for a luxurious wedding. I was so excited and happy about that, I was floating every day. But about a month after we moved into the apartment, Andrew started acting suspiciously. I'm going out for a bit. Take care. You're going out again on Saturday? It's been every week lately. Is there something? It's nothing major. Do I have to tell you? Every Saturday, he would go out somewhere. I didn't know the purpose, but it clearly felt like he was having an affair. I remembered when we were dating, Andrew used to talk to a lot of women. Even then, it felt like he was just joking around, so I thought that's just how he was, but lately, he's been overtly suggesting he's with someone else. That bothered me. Did he want me to find out he was cheating? Or was he just bad at hiding it? I couldn't understand his intentions at all. So, I decided to investigate. Every Saturday after Andrew left, I would check his belongings, smell his clothes when he came back, secretly check for anything suspicious, and finally, I started tailing him to see where he was going.
A hotel? Why on a Saturday afternoon?
He went into a luxury hotel. Then, 2 hours later, I saw him come out with a woman who looked a bit younger than me. I had caught him red-handed. I took photos of the scene and decided to go home. I thought I'd plan my next move until Andrew came back. There was nothing suspicious in his belongings, but now I had evidence. Then, at 6 p.m., just as I was preparing dinner, he came home.
I'm home.
Welcome back. Andrew I had loved was cheating on me. I had witnessed him with a strange woman earlier today. But despite that, his "I'm home" made me suddenly not want to believe he was cheating, and I couldn't speak.
What's wrong? You look upset.
No, it's nothing. Sorry, I was just thinking. Surely he wasn't cheating with that woman. I tried to interpret it that way in my head and forget about it. But I still worried. Unable to speak, I ended the day hiding my feelings. Aren't you going anywhere today?
Sunday is as usual, with you. Why are you asking suddenly?
Andrew usually spent Sundays with me. I knew that, but yesterday's actions had me thinking strange thoughts, and I couldn't say anything. Julie, shall we watch that movie we missed last Sunday? Andrew spoke to me kindly as always. So, again, I couldn't doubt him. The more time we spent together, the stronger that feeling became. The only evidence of his possible affair was that one incident at the hotel. Hey, Andrew, you love me, right? I couldn't ask about the affair, but I could ask if he loved me. Sitting next to him as usual, I asked, and he patted my head.
I love you.
And said. It looked like a scene from a newlywed couple in love. Is there any love for me in Andrew's heart? I couldn't help but think about it with doubts swirling in my mind. That day, I spent a typical Sunday, but on Monday, fate took a dramatic turn. I managed to finish work early and went grocery shopping on my way home. On the way back, I was hit by a truck coming from behind.
Oh! That face!
After hitting me, the truck stopped for a moment, and I saw the face of Andrew's mistress from last week.
Hey!
I wanted to call out, but she hurriedly drove away. I tried to chase her, but there was no way I could catch up with the truck, and she ignored me, leaving me injured.
What? Are they really having an affair? Do they have a grudge against me or something?
Frustrated by the mistress's actions, I clutched my increasingly painful arm and decided to head to the hospital where Andrew claimed to work.
I can't forgive this anymore. Until yesterday, I thought it was a misunderstanding, but after what she did, I've reached my limit.
The hospital was a bit far, so I had to take a cab. Remembering the hospital's name that Andrew had mentioned, I told the driver and headed there.
My name is Julie Miller. I'd like to see Dr. Andrew Miller, my husband.
When I arrived at the hospital and spoke to the receptionist, she told me that there was no such doctor there. The pain in my arm kept getting worse. It felt hot, and the area that was hit was swelling and heating up. The pain increased, and I started to lose my breath.
Did you just say Julie Miller?
As I was in despair from the shock of Andrew not being there and the pain in my arm, another nurse approached me and sat me down in a chair.
Yes,
I replied, barely conscious from the pain, and the nurse gave me a sly smile, putting her hand on my shoulder and speaking gently.
You're Andrew's wife, right?
The nurse asked me the same question again.
Yes, I'm Andrew's wife. I see. Thank you for coming.
The nurse said something mysterious and had me fill out some paperwork.
I want to talk about many things, but now is not the time.
Let's take care of that arm first. There was a wait, but they quickly attended to me, and it was soon my turn.
Why did you come here? This is the internal medicine department. Normally, you should go to orthopedics, but your condition seemed serious, so we treated you. From now on, please go to orthopedics. I can recommend a place.
Although the doctor was not a specialist, he examined and treated my arm, including first aid. The care afterward was thorough, and it was a good hospital, but after the treatment was over, the same nurse approached me again and spoke.
We can't talk here. Can you come back later? I've left my contact information, so please reach out if you need anything.
With that, she returned to the reception area. When I got home, I saved the contact information on my phone and headed to the specified location. The nurse was already there, sitting on a nearby bench.
Sorry, I'm late. It's okay. I just got here myself. So, what do you want to talk about? You seem to know Andrew as well. I don't want to hide it. I'm having an affair with him. What? Did you understand?
Are you okay? I was in a panic. Just the other day, I encountered someone who I thought might be Andrew's affair partner and saw her face. But now, the nurse in front of me was somehow confessing to it. I couldn't make sense of anything anymore.
What do you mean by an affair? Why? Then who was that person?
I muttered, trying to sort out the situation by listening to what the nurse had to say.
Let me start with myself.
My name is Rebecca.
I've been seeing Andrew for about 10 years now. I say affair, but it's more like we're friends with benefits. It's been a long relationship, so I understand his personality well, and I know his bad habit with women. Friends with benefits? For 10 years? Surprising, right? Andrew even told me when he got married. So, calling it an affair might be off, but friends with benefits is pretty similar, don't you think? Also, I've known about all the women Andrew has been with, so I was a bit curious about Julie. What do you mean? The women Andrew has been with? That guy is just after physical relationships. He has no intention of getting married. He lied to Julie about being a doctor, but he's actually a medical equipment sales rep. He's a terrible guy who charms women with his smooth talk. Before Julie, there were probably about 9 women, and even while he was with Julie, he was seeing several others simultaneously.
Hearing the truth from Rebecca, I was speechless. I couldn't believe he was that kind of person. I couldn't believe he had been lying to me all this time.
Then, why did he marry me? He proposes to women he likes or wants to be with for a long time, marries them, and then divorces them when he gets bored. That's how he's always lived. So, he never reveals his real job. I might be the only one who knows. No way! So he lied to me about his job? Awful, isn't it? He sees women as nothing more than playthings. And he treats marriage lightly too. That's why he easily proposes and easily divorces. There are quite a few women who've fallen victim to him. I can't believe it! He's very good at making women fall for him. That's why everyone gets tricked into marrying him. Unbelievable, right?
Knowing his true nature, I understood he was a horrible man who only saw women as playthings. He deserved to be punished. Feeling anger towards him welled up inside me.
Thank you for the information. Why are you siding with me? I'm tired of being with him too. Even though we're friends with benefits and he comes over sometimes, it's just for physical reasons. I'm convenient for him. And it seems he doesn't see me as a romantic partner. He shares things with me because he's comfortable, but lately, I've been getting fed up with hearing about his women. What do you mean, you're convenient for him? I can't have children. So no matter what we do, I can't get pregnant. That's why I'm completely convenient for him. For 10 years. Isn't that sad? It is sad. And he doesn't see me as a romantic partner either. He keeps saying unnecessary things. It's so mentally exhausting.
Seeing Rebecca's desperate expression, I felt a strong urge to protect her. Rebecca was suffering, being targeted by Andrew, a man who was only after physical relationships. And I was also feeling hurt by Andrew's actions. We should get revenge together. I started to think.
I want to get back at him and his affair partner. This arm, it was injured by the affair partner. I know her face, and I have her license plate number. I'm thinking about suing her.
When I showed Rebecca the photo of the affair partner, Rebecca suddenly burst out laughing.
Kelly did it? I warned you to be careful. Huh? What do you mean?
Her name is Kelly. She's one of the women Andrew's playing around with. He dates multiple women and keeps one who can be easily dismissed if caught. That's her. She accidentally met me and learned about his situation. Since then, she listens to what I say. I asked her to check on his wife, but told her to be inconspicuous because she's quite dull.
So, was the accident a coincidence? Yes, she's capable of that. And she ran away, right?
She did, at full speed.
Sorry, she's naive and didn't mean any harm. Please forgive her. No way. My bone is fractured. And it'll take a month to heal, that's pretty long.
You're right. It might be good for her to take responsibility. Kelly was indeed the affair partner. And it seems she also wants revenge on him, and she's been planning it with Rebecca.
Anyway, we three who want revenge are together now. Shall we start executing my plan for revenge?
Our counterattack began. A few days after meeting Rebecca. Before Andrew came back from work, the two came to my apartment.
Nice to meet you.
Don't worry about it. I haven't forgotten that day. I'll make sure you compensate for this arm. Kelly seemed a bit scared after hearing about me from Rebecca. She spoke to me in a low voice, but I spoke clearly. Kelly was surprised by my attitude and laughed.
You're quite straightforward.
If you hadn't run away that day, this wouldn't have happened. I heard the details from Rebecca. This time you'll compensate for my arm. Either by using a lawyer or your insurance. I'm sorry. I'll be careful from now on. Kelly sincerely apologized. She had panicked and ran away after accidentally hitting me while tailing me. Even so, a hit and run is a crime. I have a photo of her license plate and a doctor's diagnosis. If I submit them to the police, it will be treated as a personal injury accident and she'll be punished. It wasn't a malicious accident, but it will be a good lesson for the younger Kelly.
My name is Kelly. I'm frustrated with Andrew playing with me, so I want to get back at him. Nice to meet you,
Kelly said, raising her fist enthusiastically. She seemed quite eager. As we were talking, it was time for Andrew to come home. The two moved to the dining room and sat on the chairs there. Then, the front door opened and Andrew's voice was heard.
I'm home.
He looked curiously at the shoes at the entrance.
Sorry, they came suddenly, so I haven't told you yet, but some friends are here.
We're preparing dinner now. He entered the house without any suspicion and headed to the dining room. Seeing the backs of the two people, Andrew didn't initially recognize who they were and was about to greet them. But the atmosphere between them made Andrew pause, and his face started to tense up.
Wait. These two.
He muttered softly, and the two turned to face him.
It's been a while. Haven't seen you around lately. How have you been? Welcome back. We've been waiting for you.
They greeted him and urged him to sit down with a nod. I also felt the pressure of the moment and sat next to them.
Friends?
You know these two, don't you?
What do you mean know them?
You know what it means for them to be here. Don't pretend anymore.
I was cheating, but Rebecca is different, right? Rebecca is different? Don't say nonsense. It's the same thing. It's not the same. We didn't do anything like cheating, right?
For some reason, Andrew didn't seem to think that what he did with Rebecca was cheating and insisted it was a misunderstanding. But Rebecca seemed irritated by Andrew's comment and glared at him angrily.
Friends with benefits is still cheating. Don't try to fool me. Now I get it. You never had any romantic feelings for me, did you? Was my body just convenient for you? Don't be ridiculous.
Why are you suddenly saying this?
I told you a long time ago, there's no romantic feelings left. Even so, I believe there was still something. Otherwise, why would you stick around for 10 years? I'm sorry. But why bring this up now? You break up with women quickly when you get bored, but you kept me around. I thought maybe there was something special.
Rebecca seized the moment to voice her thoughts to him. In her words was a desperate hope that, even if not romantic, she held a special place in Andrew's heart. However, his view was different.
Special feelings? Not really. We were indeed lovers at first, but once we became friends with benefits, it was just that. You had an easygoing vibe, so I started to depend on you to vent my frustrations.
Andrew's words made tears suddenly well up in Rebecca's eyes, as if her feelings for him had been severed.
Yeah, you said that from the start. Am I the only one who has lingering feelings?
Rebecca wiped her tears and forced a smile. Even though she was exasperated by Andrew's words, she still had a faint glimmer of affection for him.
You belittle women too much. Isn't Rebecca pitiful? And isn't it the same for me? You'd divorce me as soon as you no longer needed me, right? I heard a lot from her. Rebecca, did you tell her everything? And why are you two even connected? I can't understand that. This arm, I didn't explain properly after I got injured, but it was Kelly. I got into an accident with her driving.
I hadn't told him about going to that hospital after I got injured. I mentioned a car accident, but not the hit and run. Andrew had been concerned for me, but once he said he'd find and sue the culprit.
I see, then you're okay.
He stopped getting involved after that. You seemed to show some concern, but it was clear that you weren't really that interested.
Kelly, what are you doing? Didn't I tell you to make sure not to get caught? What do you mean? I know I'm just convenient for you. What? You made the mistake of telling me everything. In such a small community, didn't you realize that lying and cheating would eventually be found out? Using the name of the hospital I work at to deceive women, that's why this is happening. Pretending to be in a different profession and getting married, how confident are you? It's unbelievable. So, what? You two connected through that hospital?
You're quick to catch on. That's right. Both Kelly and Julie just happened to come to our hospital. And then, we found out about each other's situations and connected. It's a small world.
And then, when I was told that I was just being played with too, I got really mad. Hearing that you see women as nothing but toys made it even worse.
Rebecca and Kelly started accusing him, and he began to shrink. He probably never experienced women taking revenge on him before. He seemed overwhelmed by the intensity of the two women.
I didn't really do anything to you just because you saw me cheating, but the fact that I'm cheating is wrong, right? Even though we're married.
I said that and joined the two, intimidating Andrew. His previously arrogant attitude changed, and he started to apologize.
I'm sorry, it was my fault. I've always been like this, I can't help it. I don't stay with the same woman for long, I get bored.
Then don't get married.
Why do you even make that choice? Because I want to be with someone for a long time. But it never lasts. I don't know why. It's a mystery to me too.
Mystery?
What are you talking about? Have you ever thought about how your actions hurt others? You get married, and then a few months or years later, you get divorced? Even though you swore you loved each other.
I couldn't forgive his casual words about me. Saying things like, I can't help it because that's how I am, or it's a mystery why I can't stay with the same woman, felt like he was trying to justify himself with vague words, and I couldn't stand it.
I wanted to believe that you loved me, so I didn't want to believe you were cheating at first. But when I heard the truth, I realized that you easily discard women when you get bored with them, and that made me feel disgusted. What were those feelings until then? I liked you at that time. But then, suddenly I start to dislike or get bored, those feelings come up. Yeah, you used to say that a lot. If that's all you feel, then you shouldn't have gotten married in the first place.
Rebecca said that and handed Andrew a certain paper. Seeing that paper, Andrew's face began to pale.
Wait a minute. If you do this, I'll lose my social status. You played around with the women at your company, and even with the nurses from our company's clients, and you say that?
Our director also said, if we do business, we want to do it with more serious people. I didn't understand what was going on, but after hearing Rebecca's explanation, the truth came out. His job was in medical equipment sales, and he had once come to Rebecca's hospital for business, which resulted in a deal. Rumors spread to other hospitals from there, and Andrew seemed to have gotten quite good sales results. But due to this incident, trust was lost, and if the contracts were cut, there was a fear that they would be canceled one after another. He seemed to be afraid of that. Desperately, I clung to Rebecca, hoping she would reconsider. The paper Rebecca showed was the document that detailed our exchanges.
Are you kidding me? It's over. Do you realize all the contracts I've worked hard to secure will be meaningless now? Just think about it as doing something equally significant. No way! My career is on the line here. I could get demoted or even fired. Have I ever done anything that severe to a woman? The women you dumped before probably felt the same way. Getting dumped suddenly is a huge shock for a woman. If it involves marriage, it's even more devastating, similar to how you're feeling right now. That's exactly how I feel right now. Imagine being betrayed after trusting someone for so long. It's heartbreaking.
With those words, I quietly handed the divorce papers to Andrew.
Are you saying you want a divorce?
Of course. After feeling like this, there's no point in staying together.
But I still love you. Stop it. How can you say that so calmly?
Even though I decided to cut ties, his gentle words stirred my emotions. In this situation, my heart wavered. I truly wanted to part ways, but why could Andrew say such things? I was lost in these thoughts when it happened.
I can't tolerate it either,
Kelly said, throwing something at him. It hit him and burst, spreading a red stain. It was a dye pack.
What the hell are you doing? Isn't this a dye pack?
I've always wanted to throw one. It feels so good. It's perfect for someone like you.
It's not perfect. Do you know how much this suit costs? Dye pack paint doesn't wash off. You've ruined a suit. What were you thinking?
Kelly, looking satisfied and smiling broadly, seemed to have her revenge.
I always knew you were a bit eccentric, but this is too much. Fine, I'll leave. Don't ever show your face to me again.
You don't have to tell me twice. I'm sorry, but I need to leave you too. My feelings have changed.
Wait, why is Rebecca saying that? I'm tired of being with you. You keep saying things I don't want to hear, and all you care about is physical stuff.
He seemed more shocked by Rebecca's breakup than mine. Clinging to her, he couldn't understand why she had to leave.
What? Is Rebecca more important to you than me? It's not like that. Then what? You seem more upset about her than you did with me.
Anyway, you can't get intimate with other women and it's not enjoyable, right? He used to say our physical chemistry was perfect. Sorry, but I can't anymore, so don't ever contact me again.
Disgusting. You're filthy. That's enough. You always said you loved me, but now I feel cheated. The divorce is final, so sign the papers.
Andrew, who still had lingering feelings for Rebecca, reluctantly signed the divorce papers at my insistence. After that, we left him behind and moved out of the house.
I never imagined I'd be so emotionally drained in just a few days, but I'm glad I met some great people. Can I stay with you tonight?
Sure. How about we all go out to a restaurant? Afterward, Andrew resigned from his job, vacated his apartment, and disappeared somewhere. You know how I exposed his behavior to the director, right? They didn't terminate his contract, but they did change his assignment. Andrew was removed from his duties, and he got so scared of being fired that he ended up quitting. The new person in charge told me, for someone who was so arrogant with us, he turned out to be quite the coward.
He's probably found another woman to mess around with by now. Knowing him, he'll live his life that way forever.
What Rebecca said seemed likely. Even after quitting his job, he probably had enough money to find another woman to fool around with somewhere. That day, Rebecca and I were alone at a cafe, but later, when we went to a cafe with Kelly, I learned a shocking truth from her. Did you hear? Andrew was conned by a woman he was planning to marry.
What? Seriously? What happened? Before I broke up with Andrew, he was already seeing other women.
Right. He introduced you as a friend to his other girlfriends. Exactly. And someone who was still in contact with him told me that just 3 days ago, he was swindled out of all his savings by a woman he planned to marry.
All his savings? I know he had quite a bit saved up. It's all gone. Apparently. And that woman was dating us at the same time, and she made him buy her a lot of expensive brand name bags.
The truth was terrifying. If I hadn't taken action, I would have been dragged into an even worse mess. Kelly said that when Andrew started dating me, he was also seeing Kelly, the con artist, and another woman. He was dating 4 women at the same time, married one of them, and that one turned out to be a con artist. I spent my married life with Andrew, knowing this fact. I thought to myself that Andrew was getting what he deserved, and I resolved to live a normal life from now on. I became good friends with the two people I met during that time, and we started hanging out together. By the way, Kelly, who had caused the accident, got a settlement through court negotiations, and the police treated it as a personal injury case, so she faced appropriate consequences. Kelly, though inexperienced in life, has a charm that is quite endearing. Since I'm still young, I decided to find a new partner and get married again.
You don't even know that, you stupid wife.
Mary, my mother-in-law, always calls me a stupid wife. I'm freelance programmer who works from home, so I'm usually at the house. But Mary constantly summons me at her own convenience. Chores at Mary's house, weeding the garden, shopping, carrying bags, being her personal chauffeur. None of these tasks are urgent. It seems she just wants to order me around as she pleases. When we visited her house to announce our engagement, she and my father-in-law John welcomed us so warmly. I thought I wanted to become closer with them, so I decided to live near her place. I never imagined it would turn out like this. Being called by Mary 3 times a week is hindering my work. This could damage my reputation as a freelance programmer. So, after discussing it with my husband Ethan, I got him to agree that after driving her for shopping one last time, I wouldn't have to deal with her anymore. If I can just endure this one last time, I'll be free from this hardship. That's the only reason I've been doing everything she tells me to, but...
Oh, ouch! Ouch!
When I arrived at Mary's house after finishing the shopping, I found her sitting on the ground next to the car. She keeps saying ouch, with no indication of standing up. It seems like she's injured herself somehow.
Hey, stupid wife! Call an ambulance!
Even in this situation, it disgusts me how she calls me stupid wife. No matter what, this woman only knows how to curse at me with foul language. If she's going to say that much, should I really act like a stupid wife then? An ambulance, right? Got it. I'm Emma, 30 years old. Currently, I'm a freelance programmer working from home. I got married this year and live together with my husband Ethan, who's 4 years older than me. Originally, Ethan and I worked at the same company. He was my senior colleague in charge of training me when I joined as a fresh graduate. I thought he was a kind and reliable senior who patiently taught this clueless newbie how to do the job. But at first, I was so focused on learning and managing the work that I didn't think of him as anything more than that. Once I became capable enough to handle some responsibilities, I got the chance to work on a project together with Ethan as part of the same team. As we spent time together racing toward the same goal, I started to strongly sense his kindness and sincerity. At the party celebrating the completion of that project, the distance between me and him rapidly closed. After dating for about 2 years after that, we got married, which brings us to today. When I got married, I quit my company job and became a freelancer. That said, I still get work from my previous company, and I've maintained good relationships with the clients I've dealt with so far, so I've been steadily taking on projects. After getting married, Ethan and I rented an apartment near his parents' home. My own family lives about a 4-hour drive away, so it's not easy to visit them casually. But Ethan's parents' place is close to where we originally lived. When we visited them before the wedding to introduce ourselves, they treated us so well. I had hoped to become even closer with such kind parents, which is why I decided to live nearby. Plus, in talking with John, I discovered we had some unexpected things in common. It turned out that John knew the person in charge at one of my work clients. I love comedy, and it just so happens that John is a fan of the same comedy duo. John holds a high position at the company he works for, but he always interacts with me in a warm, friendly way. There are ways he resembles Ethan, which makes it easy for me to talk with him. Our conversations often get lively. At times like that, I get the feeling that Mary is giving me a sharp look, but no, I must be imagining it. I do intend to maintain a certain level of discretion in our relationship. Or so I thought. But lately Mary has started contacting me a lot. She asks me to do things like pull weeds in the garden, or go to some supermarket that's having a sale on eggs and bring some to her house too. Mary probably thinks that since I'm at home, I have too much time on my hands. I explained that I work from home, but Mary has always stuck to the old ways of doing things and seems to have trouble grasping the concept of remote work in this day and age. She often says, "You're at home all day, aren't you?" Even though I'm at home, I set work hours just like when I was employed at a company, and during that time I focus intently on getting my work done. If I'm in danger of missing a deadline, I have to work at night too, just like overtime. When multiple projects pile up, it gets hectic. So it's a real problem when she suddenly says things like,
"Come pick up some vegetables at my place right now."
I've explained many times that I'm working the same as if I were going to an office, and I've declined. But it's as if she's not even listening to what I say. She keeps saying the same things every time, and the frequency of her calls is only increasing. Maybe she's getting desperate because I'm not doing what she tells me to. But I want to do my job properly too. As a freelancer, that's what my reputation hinges on. However, Mary wasn't about to give up so easily. When I refused, she started barging into my home with her tea-drinking friends from the neighborhood in tow.
"You never come over, so I brought these to you. Look, I brought all these vegetables. They're wilting a bit since you never come to get them, but you can still eat them, right?"
Saying this, she dumps a huge pile of half-rotten vegetables at the entrance and lingers there chatting endlessly with the others.
"You say you have work, but isn't taking care of the house also a daughter-in-law's job?" Young people these days just don't understand the importance of maintaining relationships. Not cherishing your mother-in-law is no different from being an ungrateful child. Is this what harassment by a mother-in-law looks like? How frightening. Even if you say you're busy, surely you can spare some time to show your face?
What's the point of living so close if you don't even visit? Humph.
She must look down on us. Young people these days are so difficult.
4 or 5 neighborhood ladies stand at the entrance of my home with the door wide open, incessantly screeching like this. I don't know what kind of story Mary told her friends, but having my time wasted like this and being spoken ill of so one-sidedly is more than I can bear. If I had to summarize what these ladies are saying, it basically amounts to do as what she says. In other words, if I don't obey her, this scene will keep repeating itself in the future. I guess I have no choice if I want to avoid trouble. Any work I can't finish, I'll just have to take care of late at night. Steeling myself, I decided to go along with Mary's errands to a certain extent. However, I soon came to regret that decision, realizing it may have been a mistake. Being suddenly summoned with a
"Come over to my house,"
became the norm. She would show up at my place saying,
"I made some side dishes for you."
Then open my fridge without permission, noisily look around my house, and complain.
"Make sure to clean properly, it's filthy."
I would also get called over to Mary's house and be made to pull weeds in the garden, do dishes, and clean her home. Furthermore, since Mary doesn't have a driver's license, she would constantly call me to bring the car and use me as her personal taxi. The destinations varied, from nearby supermarkets to distant shopping malls. Mary would get in the car and simply state the destination. Of course, There were times it was somewhere I didn't know or had never been before. I would ask where it was located or which direction to head in, but
"You don't even know that, you stupid wife."
she would just hurl insults like that without actually telling me. Left with no other option, I would look it up myself or input it into the car's GPS. When we went shopping like this, she would always buy massive amounts, and I would be ordered to carry her bags. John probably earns a lot, and with just the two of them, they can likely afford to shop that much. But there are plenty of rather expensive pieces of jewelry and things that make me wonder, do you really need that? I think she probably intends to show off to me too.
If you don't have proper things like these, it's clear you have no class. A stupid wife like you wouldn't understand.
She says stuff like that to me all the time. Even though she drags me along to shop with her every single time, she's never once said thank you or given me anything. It's not that I want things like that from her, not at all. I just think it's simply harassment towards me, nothing more. I want to quit this role that has no meaning and is only a loss for me, but I'm sure if I refuse, that gang of neighborhood ladies will come barging in again. I was struggling to figure out what to do when Ethan, who had just come home from work, said this to me while we were having dinner together.
"Emma, you've been working a lot lately on weekends and at night too, right? Are you swamped with projects or something?" "It's because your mom has been ordering me around 3 times a week on weekdays." "Huh?"
I couldn't take it anymore. I must have been tired too. I got irritated, wondering who he thought was to blame.
"For a while now, she's been telling me to do things like clean the yard and come pick vegetables, you know." "Wait, you mean my mom has been telling you to do that?" "Yeah. Even when I say I can't go because I have work, she won't listen. She brings her lady friends over to our house and they complain loudly, saying things like it's a harassment. Every single time, she jerks me around saying bring the car now, and even makes me carry her bags. I can't get any work done during the day."
I told him all about Mary's misdeeds, but Ethan had a doubtful expression. Well, that might be understandable. Because in front of John and Ethan, Mary is the very picture of a good wife, wise mother. Just like the ideal image of a wife from the old days, she devotes herself to her husband, holds back, and follows 3 steps behind. That said, it's not like John is some extremely henpecked husband, and since Ethan lived alone for quite a while, he doesn't mind doing housework either. But when Mary is around, she says the men should just sit and does everything herself. By the way, in front of John and Ethan, she calls me Emma, not stupid wife. When it's just the two of us, I'm stupid wife. When the men are watching, she doesn't make me do anything and even puts on airs of looking after me, which I think is amazing. I've never seen someone who can switch between 2 faces so cleanly like that. For that reason, to Ethan, Mary is the perfect mother, always kind and considerate of her family. I thought so too at first, which is why I agreed to live near Mary's house like this. But the reality was different. My mother-in-law had an unbelievably dark side. Still, for Ethan, it probably doesn't feel good to hear his own parent bad-mouthed. And more than anything, Ethan seems to like his mother, so I thought it would be better for me not to say anything, but I want Ethan to understand soon too.
"Mom did all those things. You don't believe it?" "No, it's not that I don't believe it, but do you think I'm lying?" "I don't think you lie."
Thank goodness. If Ethan had called me a liar here, it would have been grounds for immediate divorce. Hey, can you tell her to stop? Getting called out on weekdays is really tough for me.
"Huh, you want me to tell my mom that?"
Yeah.
"If I say it, she'll just say shut up, stupid wife, and that'll be the end of it."
He still has an expression like he can't 100% believe what I'm saying. But he should understand that doubting me in this situation is the real problem.
Okay. I'll call her now then.
Yes. Please. Maybe Ethan thought that by calling in front of me, if I were lying, I might get flustered. But there's not a single lie in my words, so there's no damage done. Rather, if Mary will quiet down after being scolded by her beloved son, I can easily forgive a small suspicion like that by pretending not to notice. Ethan takes out his smartphone, swiftly operates it with his fingertips, and puts the smartphone to his ear.
Oh, hi Mom. Yeah, I'm eating now. Pork sauté today and I wanted to ask you something.
I can picture Mary getting all excited over a call from her son.
Is it true that you're calling Emma 3 times a week and making her do errands?
I'm a bit disappointed that he's phrasing the question like that. He's making it seem like he's only asking because I said so. Well, it's actually true, so whatever. I'm sure Mary will say something like it just ended up that way or Emma is so kind that I can't help relying on her. Silly me.
Emma has work too, so it's a problem for her to be called out like that. No, she's at home, but she says it's the same as working at a company.
I sigh, realizing he just doesn't get it after all. Mary probably wants to say that I should quit my job, hurry up and have kids, and take care of the house. Just like she did. And I think she also wants to loudly declare that I should listen to what she says. I get that it's inconvenient without a car. Maybe Dad can take you on weekends or... Yeah, that's his time off, but Emma isn't on break on weekdays, she's working. Yes, that's it. Go, Ethan. Secure my proper work hours for me. It's not okay even if it's just sometimes, but... Wait a sec. Saying that, Ethan takes the smartphone away from his ear and looks at me.
Mom says she wants you to take her to the shopping mall just for tomorrow.
But I have a job due for delivery the day after tomorrow. Does she think I can just block off my schedule ahead of time? And what about Ethan, relaying that to me without changing anything? I can hear Mary's shrill voice talking non-stop from the smartphone Ethan is holding. Mary always uses this fawning tone when talking to Ethan and John. But when she orders me around, she uses a much lower and more curt way of speaking.
She said just for a little while in the afternoon.
And?
I know it's really a bother for you, Emma, but could you please do it just for tomorrow?
For a moment, the word divorce flashed through my head. I've heard that dealing with the in-laws is often a cause for divorce. I thought about it as if it were someone else's problem. Then you won't have to listen to Mom's requests anymore. You heard that, right, Mom? Make this the last time. Ethan puts the smartphone back to his ear and speaks to Mary. Even though she has work tomorrow too, she's specially making time for this. You get that you need to be grateful to her, Mom? As I half listen to Ethan talking, I start to feel fed up. In the end, Ethan prioritizes Mary and demands that I work for Mary's sake. It's disappointing. But thinking realistically, if after tomorrow I never have to follow Mary's orders again, that's a big benefit for me. From now on, I can just ignore whatever she says. And even if she tries to force things, I can just toss it all to Ethan to deal with. In the first place, if I got divorced, I'd be cutting ties with Mary too, I suppose. Sorry for deciding on my own, but it didn't seem like the discussion would wrap up unless I made it a trade-off. Ethan, apparently finished with the call, places his smartphone on the table and says this. I'm really sorry. Mom doesn't know much about the ways of the world, and she tends to assume she's always right, so she can be pushy. So I should just do as she says? No, that's not it. Unless we make it so we each get one demand met, we won't find a compromise.
I've been compromising and pushing myself all this time.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I understand that Ethan probably couldn't really believe Mary was in the wrong either, but he trusted what I said and talked to Mary for me. I also get that using a trade-off to settle the negotiation can be effective. Still, it feels unreasonable. The feeling that I can't accept it is strong, and I don't feel like saying thank you for resolving this to him.
So, what time tomorrow?
Oh, around 4, she said.
I'll go because I don't want to be accused of breaking a promise, but this really has to be the last time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. Just looking at Ethan's relieved face irritates me. Why do I have to feel this way? I didn't get married to feel like this. Rather, if I hadn't gotten married, I wouldn't have to feel this way. My thoughts started to spiral out of control, so I consciously stopped thinking about it for a moment. I can think more about the future after I get through tomorrow. I don't want to, but for now, let's just try to overcome tomorrow. As Mary requested, I went to pick her up at 4 p.m. She made me wait about 30 minutes, saying I'm not ready yet. When she finally got in the car, she started mumbling incessantly.
Tattling to Ethan, how cowardly! Not even listening to a family request, what an undutiful daughter-in-law! Just staying at home all day, and you exaggerate about being busy. Abandoning someone in need, you fiend! I'm so unlucky to have such a stupid wife.
It went on like this the whole time, but if I can just get through today, I'll be free. Since Ethan talked to her, she should know I'm dissatisfied. I don't need to smile at her, so I ignore all of Mary's remarks. After arriving at the mall, I had to carry her bags as usual. But when I decided not to reply to everything, I felt a bit more at ease than usual. Maybe out of spite, Mary was buying even heavier, larger, and more expensive things than ever. But we finally finished shopping, loaded the bags into the car, and started heading back. Once I drop off the bags and Mary at her house, it'll really be over. Even on the way back, Mary was babbling on about something, but it's not even reaching my ears anymore. I just want it to end quickly. That's all I can think about. When we finally arrived at Mary's long-awaited house, I immediately got out of the car and headed for the trunk.
Can you hurry up and unlock the front door? Otherwise, I'll leave it right in front of the door,
I said curtly as I got out. Mary was fussing about something, but she probably thought it would be a problem to have the bags left in front of the door. She obediently opened the rear sliding door and got out, or so I thought.
Ow! It hurts!
A loud sound, and Mary's voice. Wondering what happened, I looked from the back of the car towards the rear sliding door. Mary was sitting on the ground.
Ow! Ow! Ow!
I walked over to see what was going on. The open rear door, Mary sitting on the ground, and the scattered contents of her bags next to her.
Did you fall while getting out? This car! The door! It caught my foot! My bone is broken!
Probably out of frustration. Mary is screaming hysterically. However, this automatic sliding door has a pinch prevention function. If it senses an obstacle while opening or closing, the door moves in the opposite direction. Currently, the door is open, so she probably just fell out of the car, or closed the door too quickly while getting out and nearly got pinched. She's screaming while sitting, so she may have actually hurt something. But in the end, isn't it her own carelessness?
It hurts! Hey, stupid wife! Ambulance!
I'm really fed up with Mary, who hurls insults even in this situation. Every single time, she calls me a stupid wife. If she says it that much, Should I really become a stupid wife? An ambulance, right?
Ambulance! Are you deaf, stupid wife?
Wee-oo.
Huh?
Wee-oo. I decided to fully play the role of stupid wife. She only said ambulance. She didn't say call an ambulance. So I just kept imitating the sound of an ambulance.
Hey!
Wee-oo.
Shut up! Enough already!
Mary reached for her smartphone that had rolled out of her bag and called the fire department herself to request an ambulance. While waiting for the ambulance to arrive, I kept generously imitating the sound of an ambulance for her. It was a bit amusing to see Mary looking at me like I was some incomprehensible creature. After a few minutes, the ambulance arrived. Mary still couldn't move. The paramedics examined her, immobilized her right ankle, and carried her into the ambulance.
Should I ride along too? Of course I don't need an idiot like you.
Mary was still screaming, and the paramedics were trying to calm her down. I had no intention of riding along anyway.
Are you family?
One of the crew members addressed me. It seemed they had decided which hospital to take her to.
That person's name is Mary. I'll go to the hospital by my car.
Understood.
Then please go to this hospital.
The name of the hospital was written on the memo I was handed. It was a general hospital about a 20-minute drive from here. After seeing off the ambulance like this, I decided to contact John and Ethan before leaving. They both just finished work, so they said they would head directly to the hospital now. It was close to the company where John works, and for Ethan, he could get off at the station on his way home from work and be there right away.
I guess we'll talk when everyone's here.
I muttered to myself and got into the car. When I arrived at the hospital and entered the treatment room where the staff directed me, Mary with her right ankle firmly immobilized, John, and Ethan were all there.
How horrible! You pinned my leg with the door!
As soon as she saw my face, Mary, sitting on the treatment bed with her leg stretched out, started screaming. But with John and Ethan there, her vigor was less than half the usual.
Excuse me? It's broken! Take responsibility!
I had predicted it would come to this, but I never thought she would bring it up even in front of John and Ethan. Does she seriously believe the claim that I caused Mary's injury will hold up? I looked over at Ethan, and after a big sigh, he opened his mouth. She says it's fractured.
Apparently, she twisted her ankle with all her weight on it.
My leg got caught in the door. That woman did it. It's your fault I have a fracture.
Mom, you got hurt because you twisted your own ankle, right? As Ethan is speaking, his mother butts in, screaming hysterically. If she twisted it, that must mean she failed at getting out of the car and fell, just as I thought.
Mary, why are you trying to blame me? It's because you're harassing me. Even if you fell on your own, to say it's harassment from me. Shut up, stupid wife. It's your fault. You're the one to blame.
It seems when I'm involved, Mary's true nature comes out. Even though John and Ethan are here, her hidden face is showing.
Enough already.
John yelled at his wife, who kept screaming.
There's no need for Emma to do something like that. Rather, weren't you the one harassing your daughter-in-law?
That's not true, dear. That girl, even though she's the daughter-in-law, she never listens to what I say.
You, be quiet. Emma, could you tell us what the situation was?
It seems John didn't believe his wife's story from the beginning. In that case, perfect. Let's make sure they know everything.
Understood. Then, shall we go to the parking lot? I'll explain using the actual car.
We asked the nurse in the treatment room to look after Mary, and the three of us headed to the parking lot together.
When I saw Mary sitting on the ground, the rear door was open. So either she failed at getting out of the car, or she closed the door too quickly and panicked when it made contact. In any case, she probably didn't stick the landing.
I actually opened the rear sliding door of the car to show them.
When the door makes contact while closing, it opens back up again like this. It's a safety device installed on automatic sliding doors.
I touched the closing sliding door as if pinching my arm in it, and the door's motion stops once, then starts opening again.
That's right. If it were an old manual sliding door, that would be one thing, but for it to automatically pinch. She must have fallen while getting out of the car. It's her ankle that's injured, after all.
Ethan also says in exasperation. From the looks of it, she was really ordering you around, huh, Emma? Sorry for asking you again today. I have a lot I want to say to Ethan, who's apologizing reservedly, but for now, revealing everything takes priority.
If you look at these numerous messages, you'll understand. Far from harassment from me, I was being called so much it was interfering with my work.
I opened the message screen from Mary on my smartphone. I slowly swipe through, going back through the old messages so John and Ethan, who are peering at my phone, can see. Written there are a slew of abusive words like bring the car, go by that, clean the yard, and stupid wife.
This much?
For John, it may have been an unexpected, sudden event. He mutters in a dazed manner. Ethan too says nothing with a surprised expression, perhaps because it's his first time seeing it with his own eyes.
By the way, I carried her purchases again today, but I didn't have time to unload them from the car, so the things she bought are here.
I open the trunk to show the load inside. It's crammed full of bags. Today, there were a lot of particularly large items, and she had bought brand-name goods and jewelry.
Got it. Let's head back.
John, who had carefully checked the bags, turns back after saying just that. Ethan and I also follow and return to the treatment room where we were before.
Where did you get the money to shop that much?
As soon as he enters the room, John interrogates Mary. Mary is cowed by his serious expression.
A credit card. A card? You used the family card I gave you?
Well, there was an ad about a card you can use to withdraw money. I wondered what they were talking about at first, but when I heard ad and card to withdraw money, it clicked. Her father seemed to have realized the same thing.
Don't tell me, you borrowed from a card loan.
It said I could pay it back little by little.
How much did you borrow? No, wait, why would you even?
It's probably a considerable sum, I think. Every shopping trip, she was enjoying shopping quite lavishly. I thought John must be making a lot for her to do that, but to think this is what it was.
But...
Mary stammers in a frightened manner.
It was a power move against me, wasn't it?
I'm sure Mary herself wasn't thinking about it logically enough to explain it herself. In that case, let me explain it for her.
You often said if you don't have good things, it reveals your lack of class. So I think you felt good about flaunting that you could buy things I couldn't afford to buy. And when you told me to take you shopping, your pride wouldn't allow you to not buy anything.
At my words, Mary opened her mouth as if to retort something, but no words came out. She just twisted her face in displeasure. In other words, what I'm saying is correct.
What the heck were you thinking?
John's weak mutter echoes in the treatment room. Mary dropped her shoulders and kept her face down, not uttering a single word. About a month after her injury, Mary became able to walk. After that, I heard she started working at a factory with a company-provided housing facility. Regarding her debt, John apparently demanded that she work to pay back the amount in exchange for him consolidating it and repaying it in full. He said it was a job opportunity he found through a connection of an acquaintance, and the plan was for her to live in the housing facility and repay John from her salary, excluding necessary expenses. If she refused, she'd have to repay it on her own. Furthermore, when he said he would file for damages in divorce, she complied. John said he would make her live in the housing facility the whole time until the repayment was completed, however long that took. He hopes she'll have a change of heart while working like that, but if it's impossible, he's decided to divorce her. Who knows what will happen when she finishes repaying and comes back. For now, she occasionally calls to complain to Ethan, so I don't have much hope. Ethan tries to reason with her and sometimes doesn't even answer the phone, but for her, who has never properly worked before, it seems to be causing considerable stress. She just constantly grumbles.
It's hard. I'm tired. I don't want to feel this way. I hate this and that.
As for my relationship with Ethan, which at one point I seriously considered divorcing. After returning home from the hospital, he gave me a deep apology. I was very surprised to see someone apologizing so deeply for the first time in my life, but what surprised me even more was that Ethan was even crying with snot dripping down.
I never thought she was doing such terrible things to you. And yet, I forced you to do as she said, telling you it would be the last time. I'm so sorry for saying that when I had no idea how much you hated it.
He must have properly understood after seeing the messages from Mary that I showed him. It seemed to be tears overflowing with emotions like guilt, remorse, and empathy for me. Yes, he is a kind person, full of empathy and compassion. So much so that he doesn't hesitate to admit his faults and offer a deep apology while showing his tearful face like this. I remembered that I fell in love with him because he's this kind of person.
It did hurt when you said things that seemed to take her side. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. I feel clear about it now, so it's okay.
Emma.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm so sorry.
In a sense, we both had a valuable experience through this. I want to make use of it and deepen our bond once again. 2 years have passed since then, and we are now living as a family of 3 in a new place. Ethan was transferred after that, and we moved. I became a freelancer in anticipation of this. In this new place, I got pregnant, gave birth, and am currently in the midst of child rearing. My parents came to help out after the birth. I haven't been able to meet John in person yet, but when I talked to him over a video call while showing him the baby, the corners of his eyes drooped. Incidentally, Mary apparently still hasn't been able to come back. I plan to resume work soon. At first, I intend to keep the workload light while seeing how it goes, but balancing work and childcare will surely be tough. Even so, I want to live fulfilling days while cooperating with Ethan.
Too bad. I'll give you as much money for compensation as you want, you poor thing.
You know that Mary is the one who's the CEO, right?
I'm Mary.
I've been married to my husband David for 2 years. We both work and are so busy that we hardly have time to talk except on weekends, but our relationship is strong, and we go on an overseas trip together once a year. When we got married, we decided to build a new house and splurged on a mansion. I'm satisfied with our current life. I have a good friend from high school named Emma, and we occasionally go out for lunch together. Emma has high standards for men and isn't married yet, but she has a strong desire to marry. Especially, she won't compromise on finding someone with a high income.
Hey, can I come over to your house sometime?
And right now, I'm having lunch with my friend Emma for the first time in a while. We've both been busy and haven't been able to meet often, but we've kept in touch through calls and messages. Today, our schedules aligned. Emma and I have been close friends since high school, sharing everything about each other. Both the good times and the hard times, they all have become fond memories. Since marrying my husband 2 years ago and becoming busier at work, I've had less time to see Emma. My husband usually has weekends off, but due to the nature of his sales job, working on holidays isn't unusual. He was busy with work, and I was figuring out how to spend my free time alone when Emma contacted me, leading to this moment.
Sure, my place is close by. How about we have tea at my house after this?
Really? I'd love to.
After getting married, my husband and I built a house, but since I usually met Emma outside, this was the first time I invited her over. After finishing lunch, we headed to my house. Upon arrival, Emma was amazed.
Wow, this place is a mansion. Amazing.
When we built our house, we didn't hold back because it was a once-in-a-lifetime purchase, resulting in a house larger than the average family home. Being new, the interior was still pristine, and Emma seemed to love it.
We splurged a bit. It's our dream house, after all. It's so spacious and beautiful. Must have cost a fortune?
It was a big purchase, but it's our home. Cost us about $1 million.
Emma was shocked at that.
$1 million? Is David's salary that high?
Emma has always had high standards for men, particularly regarding income. Her question seemed to stem from those values.
David's salary? Well, it's pretty good for his age, I guess.
I tried to answer without giving specifics, to avoid any offense. I see. I didn't realize at the time, but this vague response was a sign of things to come. Unaware of Emma sneering behind my back, I went on to prepare the tea in the living room.
Hey, since I'm here, can I stay until David comes home so I can say hi?
Emma asked with a smile, teacup in hand. Seeing no reason to refuse, I happily agreed.
Great. Where's the bathroom?
This way.
I showed Emma to the bathroom and waited for her in the living room. In the meantime, I messaged my husband that Emma was visiting and suggested we have dinner together.
Wait, that's my bag.
I got lost coming out of the bathroom. Ended up touring the house and found this. This brand's really expensive, right? Mind if I borrow it for a while?
It wasn't that far from the bathroom to the living room. She probably wanted to see the house, but the bag Emma had was supposed to be in my bedroom. Realizing she had entered my bedroom without permission was unsettling. But I didn't make a fuss and reluctantly agreed to lend her the bag.
Okay, but you must return it. It's a gift from my husband. Of course, don't worry, I will.
Later, feeling a bit uneasy, I checked the bedroom while I was supposed to go to the bathroom. Nothing seemed ransacked, but it looked like the closet had been rummaged through, with bags and shoes slightly scattered. I decided to mention it to Emma when I returned to the living room. Emma, you went into the bedroom, right? Seems like you went through the closet too. I'd rather you didn't do that. When I looked Emma in the eye and spoke, her eyebrows twitched momentarily. You're right. Sorry. Won't do it again.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
While we were talking, my husband came home. I had told him in advance that Emma was visiting, so perhaps out of consideration, he brought home a cake. I'm home.
Welcome back. Thanks for the cake. This is my friend Emma. I mentioned her in a message. How about the three of us have dinner together?
Nice to meet you, Emma. Mary always speaks highly of you. Of course, I'd love to. Nice to meet you too. I'm sorry I couldn't attend your wedding, but I'm happy to meet you like this. Emma had been ill and couldn't attend our wedding, so this was her first meeting with my husband. After dinner, we enjoyed the cake my husband had bought with some tea. Emma's friendly nature meant she quickly got along with my husband, and the evening ended on a high note. About a month later, I started noticing changes in my husband. He would quickly look away during conversations and spent more time on his phone. He even started taking it to the bathroom and shower. It was an obvious change. I considered checking his phone at one point, but decided against it, feeling there wouldn't be anything pleasing to find. However, his behavior was typical of someone hiding something, and I couldn't help but suspect him. Our conversations at home became increasingly rare. Furthermore, his weekend work increased, and we began living like ships passing in the night. One day, I came home to find divorce papers on the table. Though I had anticipated it, seeing the filled-out papers still shook me. I immediately called my husband.
I just got home and saw the table. What's this about?
It means what it says. I want a divorce.
I knew something was off, but tell me why.
I've fallen in love with someone else.
Are you saying you've been cheating?
It's not cheating. I've seriously fallen for her. Though it might seem like cheating to you.
How is it not cheating? Does she know you're married?
She knows, but... My husband hesitated, making it clear we needed a face-to-face conversation. As I was about to speak, "Hello, Mary? It's me." A familiar voice replaced my husband's.
Emma? Yes. I'm dating David. And we want to get married.
Hearing this, I felt despair. My heart raced, and I felt incredibly upset.
What do you mean, get married? David is my husband.
I fell for him the moment I met him at your house. We exchanged contacts and started talking, and things escalated.
What do you mean escalated? What are you thinking?
Anger, emptiness, and sadness overwhelmed me, leaving me speechless. I know it's bad. But what can we do? We were meant to be. I'm grateful to you for bringing us together, Emma said without a hint of remorse, even though she claimed to feel bad. Her voice, instead, sounded defiant. I could never forgive the betrayal of my husband and a friend I had been close with since our student days.
You don't really feel bad, do you? Let me speak to my husband instead.
David said there's nothing left to talk about. Can you just sign the divorce papers and submit them as soon as possible?
How can I agree to anything without a proper conversation? Tell him to come home at once.
What? That's impossible. He's living with me now. There's nothing to talk about, right? You just need to sign the divorce papers. I felt nothing but suspicion and irritation towards Emma, who answered nonchalantly as if she either wanted to provoke me or bore some grudge against me.
Just put my husband on the phone.
My loud demand didn't faze Emma, who just scoffed and replied mockingly. Whatever you say, it's not going to happen.
Bye.
Holding the phone after she unilaterally ended the call, I stood there dumbfounded for a while. The sleepless nights continued, and my husband didn't come back during that time. The divorce papers left on the living room table seemed to be waiting for my signature. Emma kept sending me multiple photos of her and my husband together, as if to flaunt their close relationship. My mental health deteriorated to the point where it began to affect my job. So I decided it was time to seriously consider divorce and consulted a lawyer. I had a lawyer acquaintance whom I decided to consult. After setting up an appointment, I met with the lawyer and explained my situation. It must have been tough. My lawyer listened attentively to my story. What would you like to do? My lawyer asked, and to my surprise, my answer came more easily than I thought.
I want a divorce. But I want them to be properly punished.
That's understandable. Let's make sure to claim compensation. We can't let the evidence they've been so kind to send us go to waste. Right. I'll claim compensation from my husband and Emma and make a clean break. Thank you for your help. Leave it to me. And, although it might be unnecessary to say, try to eat well and get enough sleep to take care of your health. Thank you. After talking with the lawyer, I decided to take the necessary steps to move on. They say time heals all wounds, and I'm starting to look forward a bit more each day. Recently, I've been able to eat meals I couldn't before and sleep without an issue. The only thing I'm losing is my husband. I have nothing else to lose or worry about. Having gone through this, I'm sure something good is waiting for me next. This thought gave me some energy. And then a few days later, Emma contacted me again.
Hey, are you still clinging to the past? I want you to hurry up and get the divorce. Completely unapologetic. What's wrong with you? I'm preparing for the divorce, so tell that to my husband. That's a lie, right? You think David is coming back, don't you? I know what you're clinging to. It's David's income, isn't it? Income? Yeah, he's the CEO with an annual revenue of $500 billion. You were hiding that from me because you knew this would happen if I got involved, didn't you? My husband is the CEO with an annual revenue of $500 billion? Don't pretend you didn't know. That's why you could afford such a mansion. Did he tell you that? Yes, he told me everything. So hurry up and leave that house. It's going to be mine now. Too bad David won't be coming back. I'll give you as much compensation as you want, you poor thing. After saying that unilaterally, Emma hung up the phone. Now I understood why Emma targeted my husband. This call from Emma completely cooled off my feelings for my husband, and I started to think about life after divorce. From the next day on, I felt much clearer in my mind. In a way, I might have Emma to thank for that. The couple photos she sent today only disgust me now. Everything she sent was shared with my lawyer. After recovering from my illness and solving work problems, my usual routine finally returned. All that was left was to settle things with my husband and Emma. My lawyer had sent them the documents on my behalf. Now, we just had to wait for their response. A few days later, a reaction came swiftly. Hey! What were you thinking sending documents to my company? Emma was furious, her anger echoing. So, you were harassing me without being prepared for the consequences? Just sharing a bit of mine and David's happiness with you. It wasn't harassment. No, it definitely counts as harassment. Please, talk to my lawyer from now on. Goodbye. Hey! I hung up the phone right there. I felt a sense of relief knowing she was sufficiently rattled. Emma's calls continued, but I never picked up again. Similarly, my husband tried calling, and when he realized I wasn't answering, he resorted to messaging, complaining about documents sent to his parents' house, which exposed the affair and led to their condemnation. His messages were selfish and told me to tell his parents that it was all a lie. My disdain for my husband only grew. Returning home, having dinner, bathing, and going to the bedroom, I noticed something was off. Opening the closet, I saw that some of my bags and accessories were missing. Specifically the branded ones. I could think of only one suspect. You've got to be kidding, she went as far as to steal? I immediately informed my lawyer, who said we would need evidence to pursue this. Evidence. That's when I remembered installing security cameras around the house as a security measure when we built it. I had forgotten about them since I never had to use them before. Checking one of the cameras, I found it had recorded everything clearly. I reviewed footage from all the cameras in the house and, to my astonishment, I saw Emma stealing my branded items over several days while I was away. I was horrified. To think I was friends with such a person filled me with fear. The next day, I took the video data to my lawyer, who was also appalled. This person is incredible in a way, boldly stealing from someone else's home. This will certainly serve as evidence. But this will be a separate case from the divorce, is that okay? It's a criminal matter. Yes, please proceed with everything you have. I said, smiling eerily calm. After all that had happened, why should I hold back? It was time for her to take responsibility for her actions. Understood. But I do recommend changing your locks. Taking my lawyer's advice to heart, I changed the locks that very day. After that, I received a barrage of calls from both my husband and Emma, which I completely ignored. They even came to my house directly, but I didn't hesitate to call the police. Eventually, the calls from my husband and Emma stopped. A few days later, my lawyer mentioned that they wanted to negotiate a settlement.
Asked what I wanted to do, I agreed to a discussion, provided my lawyer was present. I was busy and wanted to settle this quickly. The lawyer arranged the date. And on the day, we met in a conference room at the lawyer's office. Emma and my husband burst into the room, opening the door aggressively.
Finally, we meet, you coward.
Stop it, Emma.
It's because she's been running away. Because of you, our wedding's been postponed.
Emma was ready to throw something at me, anger radiating from her as she yelled. My husband desperately tried to calm her down. Seeing them after so long, I felt pathetic for having to deal with such people.
Please calm down. If any violence or abusive language is detected, we will immediately call the police, understood?
The lawyer managed to settle them down for a moment, and Emma and my husband finally took their seats. With everyone ready, the discussion began.
David, you wish for a divorce, correct? We agree to the divorce. However, considering your relationship began as an affair, we will be seeking compensation. Do you have any objections?
If it means getting a divorce, fine by me. But after paying the compensation, I want nothing to do with you ever again.
Mary, is that acceptable to you?
Of course. I have no interest in continuing any relationship with him either. I stated calmly, noticing my husband's slight disturbance. But I didn't care about that anymore.
Next, regarding the amount of compensation.
When the lawyer started to talk about the compensation amount, Emma joined the conversation.
I said any amount is fine. We have a ton of money anyway.
Emma crossed her arms and spoke arrogantly. Hearing this, the lawyer adjusted his glasses.
A ton of money, you say?
Yes.
Aren't you a lawyer?
Didn't you check?
David is the CEO of a company with annual sales of $500 billion. Compensation for an affair is not a problem at all. I'll even give you a fair share of the property. Your salary must barely cover your living expenses.
Emma said this confidently, laughing, and the lawyer, unable to hold back, burst into laughter. Emma looked displeased at the sight. What's so funny? Are you mocking me? Emma said, shaken, to the lawyer who was drying his tears with a handkerchief, trying to compose himself.
My apologies. I see it now. It all makes sense.
The lawyer put down his handkerchief, looked at Emma, and smiled. The CEO is Mary, you know? David is just an ordinary employee there.
What?
Emma looked puzzled for a moment, but soon crossed her arms and sneered.
So the lawyer hired by a fool is also a fool.
Get real.
Did Mary lie to you saying she was the CEO?
How sad. I should be the one saying that you. Did you verify your side of the story? The lawyer turned to David, who looked pale. Seeing this, Emma, perhaps feeling anxious, started to press David.
You said you were the CEO of a company with annual sales of $500 billion, right? You weren't lying, were you?
David said nothing. Just looked down, pale. Seeing this, Emma gradually turned pale as well.
Answer me. You weren't lying, right? You said you were the CEO of a company with annual sales of $500 billion?
Emma shook her David's shoulder, but he just muttered. Sorry. This apology plunged Emma into despair. Emma, trembling, turned to face me and stood up, slamming the desk.
That's a lie, right? There's no way you're the CEO. I was the closest to you, so there's no way I wouldn't know.
Emma, still standing, turned her gaze from David to me and now started accusing me. So I decided to tell her the truth.
Just because we're best friends doesn't mean we share everything. Especially not our incomes. And it's precisely because I was close that I knew how greedy you were with money. That's why I never intended to tell you.
I looked straight at Emma, without averting my eyes, and told her this. Emma, unable to hide her shock, sat down on the spot.
Then, that house is…
Of course, it's in my name. So the one leaving is my husband, no, David.
He's not going to be my husband anymore. Emma fell silent at those words.
Now that everything is clear, we will claim a reasonable amount of compensation.
My lawyer said, but neither David nor Emma seemed to hear, both remaining silent.
Next, regarding the theft.
The lawyer continued unemotionally, despite the couple's demeanor. It was quite satisfying to listen to. At the mention of theft, the couple finally looked up.
Theft? Yes. You stole several brand items from Mary when she wasn't home, didn't you?
Confronted about the theft, Emma bit her lower lip. David, apparently unaware of the incident, looked surprised.
Hey! What's this theft about? It wasn't me. I don't know anything.
Emma desperately pretended not to know, but then the lawyer presented photos from the surveillance footage.
What's this?
A footage from the surveillance camera.
A surveillance camera?
Emma seemed to be unaware of the surveillance cameras. Had she known, she wouldn't have dared to steal so boldly. The husband covered his face with his hands and sighed.
Our house is equipped with surveillance cameras. We installed them for security, since we bought quite a nice house. Why didn't you say that sooner? Who would think you'd break in to steal? Plus, it means you stole the keys from me. I thought I had lost them. I wanted those brand items. You wouldn't buy them for me.
So the two started arguing. Both the lawyer and I sighed in disbelief.
Please save your quarrels for later. As for the theft, we plan to file a police report. That concludes our discussion.
Hearing the word police, Emma visibly panicked.
Police is such an exaggeration. I just borrowed something from a friend. You can't possibly file a police report, right?
I didn't lend it, and I no longer consider you a friend. I will file a report. After all, it was stolen.
No. I'll compensate. Just don't call the police.
Are you going to compensate? The brand items you stole are worth a considerable amount, you know. Are you sure you can cover that? Plus, there's also the compensation.
When I said this, Emma, thinking she had found a way out, turned to David.
Hey, even if you're not the CEO, you're still working, so you can pay, right? We're going to be fine, right?
David just looked down and remained silent at Emma's words.
He doesn't have the ability to pay. After all, he's been absent without contacting the company, so he's going to be fired.
What?
I told you he worked at my company. Ever since he started having an affair with you, his unexcused absences increased. I've been notified. There's no way we could keep such an employee, right?
But there's still the division of assets. With that
division of assets won't be possible.
Why not? The savings accumulated as a married couple should be part of the division of assets. Aren't you a lawyer? Don't you know that?
Have you not heard anything from David? You said he told you everything, yet you missed the important parts.
Then, the lawyer presented a document.
As per the prenuptial agreement, if the marriage doesn't last 3 years, neither party can claim the other's assets. Since they're currently in the 2nd year of marriage, this applies.
Emma trembled as she took the document.
Like this piece of paper has any power.
That is a notarized document, so it has legal force. However, it only means no division of assets. David's assets remain.
Emma managed a bitter smile at this.
Well, if that's the case, we're fine. David, you have savings, right? So, we're okay, right?
The face of Emma clinging to hope was no longer that of the friend I knew.
There's none. Because you kept on spending. The savings are gone.
At David's words, Emma sat down on the floor. I couldn't feel sorry for her at all. This was her own doing.
The discussion is over, so please submit the divorce papers promptly, and David, please pack your things and leave the house. That's all.
It was unclear whether the lawyer's words were heard, but the lawyer and I left the room, leaving the sitting couple behind. I left the rest to the lawyer and went home. The divorce was finalized smoothly. With the lawyer present, David packed his belongings and left the house. I received a few messages from David, but I blocked him completely. I cut off all contact with David and Emma. After being fired from the company and losing his savings, David ended up moving into Emma's place, but with the theft incident, Emma also got fired. They both desperately looked for work but only managed to find day-pay part-time jobs. Despite receiving their salary on the same day, Emma, who is bad at saving, continued to spend and ended up being evicted for failing to pay rent. This incident became known to their relatives, and both were disowned by their parents, unable to return to their parents' house. They now live in a very old, inconvenient apartment while working part-time jobs to pay compensation. I heard from a classmate living nearby that they are occasionally seen at a local spa, looking completely different from before, with worn-out clothes and hair. As for me, work is going well, and I've joined a tennis club as a new hobby. I'm enjoying working on myself while getting some exercise. 6 months later after this incident, I went on a solo trip abroad, where I met a wonderful man, and we are currently dating. This past event has become an unforgettable part of my history, but thinking that it led to the person I am today, I might feel that I made the right choice and I am now very happy with my life.
You're the housekeeper, so you do all the cooking, cleaning, and nursing. If you don't like it, get a divorce and get out.
Brian made it clear that I was his housekeeper. So that was your plan all along. I'm free labor, a housekeeper. On top of that, I'm also expected to look after your mother, Sarah.
Of course, we got married, and you're my wife. You're not cut out for it if you don't like it. Pack your bags and leave, I can divorce you anytime.
It must have been his final warning. Brian said it with a nasty smirk.
Listen, I'm an elite from a prestigious company. You're only just getting by with that pathetic business, thanks to me. Remember that.
All right, then. I whispered, and it seemed to reach Brian.
As long as you understand. Remember, do as I say.
Without responding, I turned my back on Brian and muttered quietly again. Then consider yourself fired.
What?
As a result of my actions, my elite husband. My name is Helen. 30 years old. I own a restaurant. People say it's impressive to be an owner at this young age, but the place was originally my father's, and I just took over. The chef, who's been with us since my father's time, is the one who actually cooks in the kitchen, preserving the flavors that have been cherished since its establishment. With the help of such longtime staff, I've somehow managed to keep the restaurant running. I'm still in the learning process. I took over the restaurant at the age of 22, right after graduating from college. Instead of getting a job, I was immediately entrusted with it from my father. I graduated from the economics department, so I thought I had learned a lot, but reality doesn't always follow the textbooks. Despite numerous failures, and my fair share of bad days, I've managed to keep the restaurant going to this day. I thought I was pretty lucky. About 5 years after I took over the restaurant, a man started coming regularly. It was Brian, who would later become my husband. Once, a group of men in suits came over. Brian was one of them. He said that he liked the food, and started coming as a regular customer. Brian and his colleagues were employees of a major food manufacturer, and they said they were visiting various restaurants for research.
I've had my eye on this restaurant for a while, but I usually go to the bigger ones in town, or in the suburbs, so I always pass this place by.
Oh, I understand. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. As I said that, Brian laughed sheepishly. I remember thinking he seemed honest and rather nice. My restaurant is indeed in such an odd location. But the taste is so good that many people have fallen in love with it and have been coming back for decades.
It's delicious, I've become quite the fan.
Brian confessed. True to his word, Brian became a regular customer and started talking a lot with me, the owner. Brian graduated from a top university and worked at a renowned company. He was the epitome of an elite. I had never been close to someone like that before. Not only was Brian brilliant at what he did, but he also had good looks. He was tall and slender with a well-defined face. Undoubtedly, he was the type who would be popular. Brian was 7 years older than me, so he was 34 at the time. I assumed he was married due to his age, but he laughed and said he was single. I've been living a life of work, and more work, and before I know it, I'm at this age. How silly of me. His easygoing manner, humorous conversation, and gentle tone made it seem like he wasn't an elite. Before I knew it, I had fallen for Brian. It was probably unrequited love. In his eyes, I was just the restaurant owner, and he was a regular patron. But then, out of the blue, he proposed to me.
Helen, would you consider being in a relationship with me, with marriage in mind?
I couldn't believe it. My heart was pounding. Could such a wonderful person really have feelings for me? It felt like a dream. Like Prince Charming had come for me. I felt like the protagonist of a fairy tale, and intoxicated by that dream, I accepted. A year later, I married Brian. But this fairy tale didn't end with, and they lived happily ever after. After we got married, the next chapter of the story turned into something much darker, like a picture book painted over completely in black.
Hey, you're my wife now. You understand what that means, right?
Brian said this soon after we started living together as a married couple.
Yes, we got married, so I'm your wife now.
I could only respond with confusion to his sudden change in tone. Then Brian suddenly raised his voice.
What kind of a response is that? I'm your husband, so you should address me with more respect. A wife should respect and honor her husband. Don't you even know that?
I was too shocked to respond right away. What had happened? It was as if the Brian I knew had been replaced by someone else. A transformation from a prince to a tyrant. I wondered what kind of a witch had cast such a spell.
Listen, I'm an elite, you know that, right? You have to become a wife worthy of me. Prepare yourself for the training I'm going to give you.
From that day on, I was constantly ordered around by Brian. First, Brian demanded perfect housekeeping from me.
Make sure the house is immaculate, ready for anyone to come over at any time. That's a housewife's job. Don't you dare embarrass me.
My family ran a restaurant, so honestly, our house was never in a pristine state. My father was busy in the kitchen, and my mother was helping out too. There was no way we could manage perfect housekeeping. My parents did their best, tidying up and cleaning whenever they spotted a mess, but running a restaurant while raising me was overwhelming. My grandparents on my father's side lived far away, but my grandparents on my mother's side looked after me during particularly busy hours. That was how we managed to get by.
I can't do that. I mean, I have my restaurant to take care of. Don't make excuses before even trying. You don't even want to make any effort.
I managed to put the conversation to rest at the time by saying that I would try, but when I actually started, I realized that it was impossible.
Look, I have the restaurant to handle, so can't we hire someone for the housework?
It wasn't like I was saying I wouldn't do any housework at all. I just wanted to hire a housekeeper to make up for what I couldn't manage, but Brian didn't like the idea.
Why should we waste money like that? The best thing about a housewife is that she's free labor.
I was shocked by his words. Free labor, is that how Brian saw me? It became crystal clear at that moment.
That little restaurant of yours, who knows when it'll go under? You're lucky you found someone like me to support you. Be grateful and serve me well.
When we were dating, he had praised me for taking over the business from my parents at such a young age. That's one of the reasons why I fell for Brian. It might be a small place, but it meant a lot to me, and he had once praised my dedication to keeping it going.
Just keep the restaurant as insurance. If need be, we can sell it. It's worth something even if it's small. But if it starts losing money, shut it down immediately. It's not worth keeping if it's running at a loss.
That's what he said.
So that's what you've wanted all along. I'll never let go of that restaurant, no matter what.
Just do your best, But don't forget that I'm only allowing this to be your little hobby because I feel sorry for you. Remember, it's because I care about you,"
Brian said while laughing. From that day on, I started thinking about getting a divorce. But I still had some affection for Brian. I wanted to prove him wrong and make him apologize. I was sure he would understand someday. I worked like a horse with these mixed feelings. Indeed, it's a small restaurant, sustained mostly by regulars. Nowadays, most people opt for chain restaurants which offer the same taste wherever you go. That's why big chains thrive. But there will always be those who seek a nostalgic taste. That's why I want to keep the restaurant going. That desire never fades. While maintaining a seemingly peaceful marriage on the surface, I worked hard for the day I would prove Brian wrong. And to that, Brian half mockingly, half amusedly would say,
"Wow, you're really trying hard, still keeping that restaurant going, huh? I thought it would fail soon." "Well, as long as you take care of the house, you can keep going."
I was already doing it without being told. Every morning, I'd wake up early to prepare breakfast for Brian, wake him up, and see him off, then rush out of the house. I'd spend a busy day at the restaurant, and then after closing, I'd shop for groceries, come back home to cook dinner, and clean. When Brian returned, I'd serve him dinner, get ready for a shower, do the laundry, prepare for the next day, and take care of anything else left to do. I was cutting back on sleep, scheduling every day tightly to manage everything without wasting a moment.
"If the house ever gets messy, I'll make you close down the restaurant immediately and sell it."
Brian was probably waiting for that day. I could feel it. Perhaps he married me intending to have a housewife with assets who provides housekeeping services for free. Back then, I was infatuated with Brian. He knew that and thought I'd never stand up to him. That's probably why he chose me.
It surprised me how much you dedicate yourself to the restaurant. I thought once we got married, you'd only have eyes for me.
"I feel betrayed," Brian said one day. I thought I was the one being betrayed. I had believed he understood me when he chose me. I wanted to say that, but I swallowed my words. And then things got worse.
"My mother has fractured a bone and is hospitalized. Sarah."
Brian's parents live in the neighboring state. I don't want to say this, but like Brian's true colors, they are not the most pleasant people.
"Brian is our pride and joy. A graduate from a top university, working at a leading company, an elite man. You've been chosen by Brian, so you should be grateful and serve us well." Helen doesn't realize her luck. "Someone married to our son, Brian, should be greeting us in a fancy cocktail dress and a bottle of decent wine."
That's right.
It's just as I expected. A daughter of a restaurant owner must be poorly educated.
That was the first thing they said to me when we met. Not only were they rude to me, but they insulted my parents too. I was about to say something back when my anger got the better of me, but Brian intervened to settle the matter, so I decided to keep my mouth shut for the moment.
"Come now, Helen is still young. It's understandable that she lacks in certain areas. Think of it as having a potential to grow."
I should have realized the true nature of this family at that point, but back then, I was convinced that Brian was protecting me, and that he was on my side. After that, my in-laws continued to make snide remarks every time something happened.
"I can't believe Brian married a restaurant owner's daughter." Right, someone like Brian could have married a daughter of a CEO or an executive.
Think about that, Helen.
Be a good daughter-in-law to us.
My in-laws seemed to think that only those working in big corporations like Brian were successful, and anyone in other professions, especially the service industry, were second-class citizens. But even so, Sarah's injury is unfortunate. I'd have to at least pay her a visit. But then Brian said something shocking. It's a femur fracture. She'll need hospitalization and rehabilitation for a while after surgery. Can you look after her?
Wait, but aren't hospitals still enforcing visitation restrictions? I can maybe visit or bring something, but looking after her might not be allowed, right?
Who said anything about the hospital? I mean, after my mother is discharged and comes to live with us. It took me a moment to understand what he meant. As I was silently pondering, Brian dropped the bombshell. Don't be dense. Once my mother is discharged, she's moving in with us, along with my father.
What?
You have a problem with that? Of course, it was a problem. Even the thought of living alone with Brian was unbearable, let alone with his parents too.
I can't take care of Sarah,
I said firmly.
I have my restaurant to run.
It's impossible.
Professional care would be best for her. Why should we pay for that when you're here? Then, close down the restaurant. Sell it and use that money for the family.
Brian made an outrageous demand.
I won't sell the restaurant. And I won't take care of Sarah. You're the housekeeper, so you do all the cooking, cleaning, and nursing. If you don't like it, get a divorce and get out.
Brian made it clear that I was his housekeeper.
So that was the plan all along. I'm free labor, a housekeeper. On top of that, I'm also expected to look after your mother, Sarah.
Of course, we got married, and you're my wife. You're not cut out for it if you don't like it. Pack your bags and leave, I can divorce you anytime.
It must have been his final warning. Brian said it with a nasty smirk.
Listen, I'm an elite from a prestigious company. You're only just getting by with that pathetic business, thanks to me. Remember that.
All right, then. I whispered, and it seemed to reach Brian.
As long as you understand. Remember, do as I say.
Without responding, I turned my back on Brian and muttered quietly again.
Then consider yourself fired.
What?
Brian didn't hear it clearly and asked again, but I didn't bother repeating myself.
I need to get things ready, so I can't do it right now. Fine, there's still time before my mother is discharged. They say she needs at least a month in the hospital. If you're ready by then, that's fine.
Brian must have thought I had agreed and went to the bedroom, satisfied. I had been preparing for this for 2 years. Everything had been for this very moment. But even so, I still had hope. That Brian would return to the man he was before we got married. I didn't want to believe that the person I loved so much, that those happy days, were a lie. That's what I thought. But all my hopes were shattered. I had to make up my mind. I was ready.
Hello, it's Helen. No, it didn't work out. It can't be helped. Let's take action.
I made a call to someone, ready to move forward. A month later, an article made it to the front page of the economics section of the newspaper. The story was that the food manufacturer for which Brian worked for was about to be acquired by a restaurant group in a large stock buyout.
What the hell is this?
In frustration, Brian yanked the newspaper from side to side, tearing it in half.
This is a joke. We're a leading company. And now they're selling us out to some stupid restaurant group.
Brian crumpled the torn newspaper and hurled it against the wall.
Damn it, what's gonna happen? This can't be true.
Brian turned on the TV as if waking from a nightmare, only to see the same news. It seemed the acquisition was real.
Damn it, how did it come to this?
Brian slumped down on the sofa and ruffled his hair in frustration.
There's nothing we can do about what's already happened. Here, take this.
What's this? Brian looked at what I offered him and his eyes widened in shock. He seemed very surprised.
What is this?
It's a divorce petition.
I can see that. What the heck do you think you're doing giving me this?
Brian crumpled the divorce papers and threw them too.
That too, after the newspaper? No matter how much you crumple it, nothing will go back to how it was.
Why do you want a divorce? I demand an explanation.
Are you kidding? Have you forgotten? You're the one who mentioned it.
Brian went silent, likely remembering his own words.
I won't take care of Sarah or live with your parents. If you don't like it, get a divorce. Those were your words, right?
I did say that. But well, I was bluffing, thinking you wouldn't listen to me otherwise.
So it was a threat. Brian didn't respond. I married you because I loved you. I trusted you. But you deceived me and betrayed me repeatedly. That's why I've decided to get a divorce. I took another divorce petition from the file and placed it in front of Brian. I have spare copies, so feel free to crumple that too. If I run out, I can get more or download it and print it out. We live in such convenient times. Brian stared at the divorce petition placed before him again.
This is a lie, right?
He looked at me with pleading eyes. No, it's true. This is reality.
You're not that kind of woman, right? You wouldn't do something so cruel when I'm so vulnerable.
It seemed like he wasn't going to accept it so easily. Think about what you've done and what you've tried to do to me. Which do you think is worse? I took my time to tell Brian. Do you remember what you said after we got married? That a wife should respect and honor her husband? Brian didn't respond. I respected you even before we got married. That's why I decided to marry you. But after hearing those words, my respect for you vanished. People who trample on others are also trampling on their own feelings. Brian looked down, silent. You saw me only as free labor, a housekeeper. And the restaurant I cherished, you saw as an asset to cash in. I realized that, but still, I loved you.
Helen.
Brian looked up at me with hope.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize you cared about me so much. That's why I acted harshly. Please forgive me.
Brian held my hand, tears streaming down his face.
I'll change, I promise. Give me another chance. I'll treasure you this time.
I'm sorry. I pulled my hand away from Brian's.
Why not? We loved each other, didn't we? We can still make it work.
No, it's too late. I've lost all faith in you. That's why I decided to acquire your company.
What?
Brian looked at me, bewildered. The big restaurant group that acquired your company, with 1,900 full-time employees, I'm the president of that company. Unfortunately, I'm letting you go.
No, this isn't the time for jokes. What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind?
Brian half laughed, but it was the truth. Never mind that for now. Here, take this. Brian took the envelope I handed him with confusion, then screamed in disbelief as he checked the contents.
What's this?
It was evidence of Brian's affairs. There were documents from a private investigator and numerous photos. A female employee in the secretarial department, a subordinate's wife, a recent college graduate, a woman from a business partner, a girl from a club, and who else? The list was astonishingly long. Brian is attractive. And with his elite status, it's no surprise women flocked to him. Amazing, isn't it? Your affairs are too many to count on both hands. I'll be seeking compensation for all of them, from you and the women involved.
Hey!
What? Brian, looking at the documents and photos, turned pale and trembled. He tried to speak to me, but didn't seem to know what to say. The problem is the time and place of the affairs. A lot of them seem to happen when you were supposed to be working. I think this is a breach of trust against the company. A lot of them occurred when he was out of the office on business during working hours, making sales rounds, on business trips, and entertaining clients. Brian was with his mistresses instead, as detailed in the documents.
You've been investigating me like this all along?
Yes, that's right.
That's not fair.
Brian threw the documents and photos at me.
You used the money I earned for this?
No, not a single dollar of your money was used.
Liar. You don't have that kind of money.
Brian, being an elite, had a high salary. He saw me as free housekeeping labor, but he did contribute financially to the household. You know I'm the owner of a restaurant, right?
Yeah, that near bankrupt one. Just a hobby, isn't it? Owner, huh? Ridiculous.
It's true that if you look at the finances alone, the restaurant doesn't seem that prosperous. But there's more to it. I told Brian the whole truth.
That restaurant was for gathering information. I was researching the current trends, what sells, and things like that.
That restaurant, established by my parents, was the first of many. Now, it's a major chain with locations not just in America, but abroad too. The company that acquired Brian's workplace was the parent company of that restaurant chain.
This must be a lie.
It is not a lie. The location of the original restaurant was ideal for market research. The first restaurant thrived mainly due to my father's skills. But the reason we could expand was due to understanding customer preferences.
You never talked about your family business like this before. You tricked me.
I didn't trick you. I just didn't tell you. When I started dating Brian and considering marriage, my father advised me to wait and see.
In hindsight, my father saw through your true nature. He said to tell you if you didn't change after our marriage.
Back then, I would have married Brian regardless of his opposition. That's why my father had said such a thing. And what I told Brian when we married wasn't a lie. My father was ill and struggling to continue working. So, he had my uncle take his place as the company president, and he pretty much retired. That's why it was true when I said I took over the restaurant, because my father was sick. He had undergone major surgery and difficult treatments. As an only child, I was still too young to take over the company, so I was in charge of the restaurant, partly so that I could learn new things. My business degree couldn't make up for my extreme lack of experience. I was told that if I failed to run the restaurant, I wouldn't be acknowledged as the successor. So, I worked hard to continue my father's legacy and earn his approval. My father probably warned me to keep quiet, fearing the business might be taken over or ruined by a bad marriage. But I thought Brian was different, and I wanted to prove I could be honest with him. That's why I remained silent. Well, I was disappointed.
My father even told me that if Brian wasn't the man I thought, I should resolve it by myself.
Of course, that's what I should do. There was no way I could run such a large corporation if I couldn't handle something as small as this.
So, I've lived these past 2 years thinking about how I would make you regret it if you didn't show any remorse. Though, at the same time, I hoped you'd change your ways.
I sighed, picked up my mobile phone, and made a call. The person on the other end answered right away, so I just said what I needed to and hung up. Immediately, the bell to the front entrance rang, so I unlocked it to let the visitor in.
Who's that?
Just watch. Soon the doorbell rang, and I invited the guest in.
The company president.
It was the former president of the company Brian worked for, soon to be mine. The former president bowed stiffly to me. Please proceed. The former president silently handed Brian a document.
Termination notice.
It was an official document. Brian was being fired for misconduct, including meeting women during work hours and charging personal expenses as business entertainment. In exchange for firing Brian, I promised the former president that he could continue as the company's president, and he agreed to the condition.
Even minor misdeeds can accumulate into a major offense.
What you did constitutes a serious breach of trust.
It's only fair that you're dismissed.
Brian stood in shock, but I had no intention of letting him off the hook.
If you understand, would you please leave now?
Why should I? This is my house.
This place is rented, right? The landlord says you can't stay here anymore. He doesn't want to rent it to you.
Brian looked completely confused. I decided to elaborate further.
I bought this apartment. And you seem to have forgotten, but the lease was only until last month. So, you no longer have the right to live here. I don't plan on renewing the contract.
Brian was speechless.
We'll have to decide on asset division and who gets which furniture, but for now, I don't want to see your face. Could you go back to your parents' house? Sarah is about to be discharged from the hospital, isn't she?
Sarah was scheduled to be discharged in a few days after a month-long stay in the hospital.
Go back and prepare for Sarah's return. We'll communicate through our attorneys about what comes next.
Please take him with you. I handed Brian over to the former company president.
If you come back, I'll report you for trespassing. Even though we're not officially divorced yet, if the landlord says no, it's a no. Brian left the room with the former company president silently. There was still more work to be done, but I have reached the end of a chapter. After Brian went back home, I started receiving calls persistently from my in-laws, having heard about the divorce.
Helen, you're so amazing. Why didn't you tell us?
You truly are our son's wife. We are so proud of you. Getting a divorce must be a joke, right? Helen, you loved Brian so much. Can't you forgive a fling or two? That's just men being men. At first, they were arrogant, but when they realized my resolve to get a divorce was firm, they resorted to threats.
You got Brian fired. What are you going to do about that? We'll demand compensation. What you did is unthinkable for our son's wife. Hiring a detective to investigate your husband's behavior, imagine how it would affect your reputation if it gets out.
When I confidently told them to go ahead with claiming compensation and leaking information about me, they finally shifted to begging.
Helen, I'm really sorry. It felt like you took Brian away from me, and I acted spitefully. Please understand. What are we supposed to do if you leave us? I apologize if I upset you. So, please forgive Brian. If you can't forgive him, how about just us? We were family once, after all.
Of course, I refused everything they had said to me.
I've said it over and over again, but I'm divorcing Brian.
If you keep pestering me, I'll report you to the police and consider taking legal action. After consulting with my attorney, we sent them a formal warning, and they finally stopped contacting me. I made sure Brian paid the compensation. And I ensured it was paid from the assets we divided. Luckily, his high salary meant he had savings. Now jobless and without savings, he's back living with his parents. He found a job in the service industry that he once looked down upon, working from early morning till late at night. Considering he had affairs with other men's wives, he's also facing compensation claims from their husbands. I hope he works hard and pays it all off, no matter how many years it takes. I talked to the women with whom he had cheated. All of them apologized, saying they weren't serious and were just in it for Brian's money and elite status. While I had anticipated this, any relationship with a married person, regardless of the reason, is a legal offense and can be subject to a lawsuit. I made sure these women understood the severity of their actions by legally requiring them to pay compensation. Hopefully, this will be a lesson, and they won't repeat the same mistake. After that, I officially took over as the company president from my uncle. I appointed my uncle as the chairman to continue receiving his help and advice. Although my father's condition has stabilized, he's not in a state to work. But seeing me take over the company, he started seemed to bring him peace, and his spirits noticeably improved. Occasionally, he still offers his thoughts and advice, which I value greatly. I hope my parents live as long as possible. Right now, that's my greatest wish. I've caused them so much worry by getting involved with such an awful man. I gave my parents a lot of trouble, but I resolved my problems all on my own. That seemed to make my father approve of me as a manager. Next time, I want to meet someone better and reassure my parents as a daughter, but I'm not sure I want to get married for a while. This company is like my child now. I want to raise it and help it grow bigger and better. As a company president, I'm just taking my first steps. But I believe a bright future lies ahead on this path. And of course, I'm still running that restaurant. This restaurant was where my parents began their business, and it was the start of my career. In a way, it's like my first child that I shall cherish for the rest of my life. I want to treasure it forever so that I never forget where I came from. My husband is out on a shopping trip right now. When we visited our eldest son's apartment to celebrate our first grandchild's birth, the door was opened by his wife, who did not hide her annoyance and frowned as she tried to close the door. In a panic, I handed over a $3,000 gift for the celebration.
If there's anything I can help with, just say it. Things might have changed since our time, but I want to support you as much as I can.
Raising a child is very hard. I said this hoping to lighten the load for my eldest son's wife, Elizabeth, but it backfired.
Don't act all high and mighty. We're cutting ties with in-laws like you.
Elizabeth shouted and threw the gift envelope I had just handed her into the trash bin by the entrance. My husband and I were speechless at her actions. Elizabeth glared at us fiercely.
I didn't want to hear such nonsense, that's why I didn't invite you. But he invited you without asking me.
It seemed that Donald had unilaterally decided to allow our visit. Elizabeth was unforgiving and started to complain about our son.
It's unbelievable to invite people home without my consent. Donald is so useless. I made him go shopping on purpose, thinking he would let you in if he was here.
After saying this, she emphatically told us never to come again and closed the front door. Then immediately, we heard the sound of the lock. I could no longer think of my eldest son's wife, who had insulted our son and trampled over our feelings of celebration as family. Overwhelmed with irritation, we decided to cut ties with her. My name is Madison. I've been married to Jeffrey for over 30 years, and we're still close. After our marriage, we had our eldest son, Donald. 2 years later, George, our second son, was born. On holidays, my outdoorsy husband would plan hiking and camping trips for the whole family. Hiking is tiring but gives a satisfying sense of fatigue. I had a blessed life, both in my career and personal life. But life changes. Once our sons started working, Donald and George moved out for solo living one after another. I felt indescribable loneliness as the frequency of direct or even written conversations with my sons, who I used to talk to every day, decreased. Perhaps thinking of me, or maybe feeling lonely himself, my husband invited me to hiking. We hadn't been to the mountains since our sons became university students, but after this event, we often went hiking together. After a few months, we began to settle into our new life. Our sons started contacting us more frequently, and about once every 2 months, they would come home. Though life had changed from when we lived with our sons, it felt right. The loneliness faded, and my husband and I started to enjoy our life as a couple. As our sons approached the age we were when we got married, Jeffrey and I reminisced about our past and discussed their futures. We only had boys, right? I always dreamed of getting along with our sons' wives like real daughters, going to cafes and shopping together.
That would be nice. I want to take my grandkids to hiking. Gotta stay healthy and illness-free.
We shared our dreams, eagerly awaiting good news from our sons. Then, about a year later, our eldest son, now in his 4th year working as a professional, informed us he got a girlfriend. That day, my husband and I celebrated with a drink, overjoyed by the news. But since then, Donald stopped coming home, wanting to know who his partner was and longing to see our son happy. When will you come home next? I reached out several times asking. He would reply, maybe next holiday. But it never happened. On the day, a message would come. Sorry, can't make it. And both my husband and I were disappointed again and again. He must really enjoy being with her girlfriend. I remember when Jeffrey and I first dated, I couldn't get enough of being with him. I said this to myself, convincing myself to wish happiness for Donald and his partner, and began to look forward to building a mother-daughter-like relationship with my son's wife. Half a year later, Donald finally brought his girlfriend home. They were planning to get married and came to greet us. My husband and I tried to contain our excitement, eagerly awaiting the day. But when we met Elizabeth, Donald's girlfriend, there was an indescribable atmosphere. At first, I thought she was just nervous, but her words hinted at some hostility. Elizabeth, please take good care of Donald. If you ever need anything, just let us know. Even though I said this with a smile, Elizabeth did not smile back. Instead, we'll manage on our own, she coldly replied. The mood was far from cordial, and Donald sighed. Eventually, after about an hour, the two of them left. They're just independent. That's a good thing. My husband said, trying to cheer me up.
They're not children anymore. Let's just watch over them.
Yes, you're right. They'll have to live their lives together, after all. Disappointed, I decided to step back and support them from afar. After discussing with my husband, we decided to give them $10,000 as a wedding gift. When we made the deposit, Donald called to thank us. Thanks for the money. We'll use it for the wedding.
Is the wedding planning going smoothly? Elizabeth, would she like to wear my wedding dress?
I had bought a wedding dress for my own wedding. Though I'd hoped to pass it on to a daughter, I thought it would be nice if my son's wife could wear it. I'll ask her. Send me a picture of the dress. So I took out the stored dress, took a photo, and sent it. But soon after, we received a refusal. She's already chosen a dress she wants to wear. Of course, there are preferences in dress design and style. I was a bit disappointed, but what could be done?
That's fine. If there's anything else we can help with, just let us know.
I replied. But again, a disheartening response came.
We're handling everything ourselves.
Indeed, a wedding is for the couple themselves. Still, feeling excluded, I couldn't help but worry. With a heavy heart, I attended my eldest son's wedding. The ceremony, enveloped in happiness, concluded smoothly. The reception was lively, with delicious food, and Donald looked very happy. Seeing my eldest son like that eased my anxiety. After changing outfits, the newlyweds went around for photos. Elizabeth, unlike when she first greeted us, was all smiles. At the bride's side, they posed for many photos, so I looked forward to our turn. But when Elizabeth reached us, "What's the next pose?" the photographer asked her. "We're moving to the next table," she replied. I was shocked. Seeing my reaction, Elizabeth gave me a cold look and said sharply,
"The star of the wedding is me. I don't have time to fuss over the in-laws."
And with that, she quickly moved on to the next table. As if I wasn't feeling low enough, another shock awaited me. Elizabeth was pregnant and would be having their first child in 6 months. It was certainly joyful news, but I learned of it through the words of the ceremony's MC. Looking around, it seemed Elizabeth's parents and relatives already knew. In contrast, we and the other relatives on the groom's side were visibly surprised. "Why didn't you tell us?" I couldn't contain my feelings and asked Donald. Without any sign of regret.
Elizabeth didn't want to tell anyone outside of those she's close with.
My eldest son said. That we, soon-to-be family, were not considered close was astonishing to me. I could barely stand.
Pregnancy can upset hormonal balance, causing irritability. I read it in a comic. It must be why Elizabeth's been so harsh.
George kindly tried to console me, seeing how upset I was since the photo session. I had felt a distance from Elizabeth since she first greeted us. But still hoped we could gradually become closer and build a good relationship. I didn't want to give up on our relationship with Elizabeth. But maybe it was impossible. My faint hope of getting along well with Elizabeth vanished entirely. And after the wedding, we barely communicated with the newlywed couple as days passed. Worried about Donald's absence, George occasionally visited us. 6 months after the wedding, we got a message from our eldest son.
"The baby was born."
The photo sent with the message showed a small baby wrapped in a blanket. Though I hadn't been involved and did not feel like I became a grandparent, I still wanted to celebrate. When I expressed our desire to visit, Donald quickly invited us over, and my husband and I headed to their apartment the next holiday. But when we arrived at the appointed time, our son was out.
Donald has gone shopping.
Elizabeth, opening the door, didn't hide her annoyance and frowned as she tried to close the door. In a hurry, I handed her a $3,000 celebration gift.
"If there's anything we can help with, just say it. Things have changed since our time, but we want to offer whatever support we can."
Child-rearing is very hard. I said this hoping to lessen Elizabeth's burden, but it backfired.
"Don't act all high and mighty. We're cutting ties with in-laws like you.
Elizabeth yelled and threw the gift envelope I had just handed her into the trash bin by the entrance. My husband and I were speechless at her actions. Elizabeth glared at us.
I didn't want to hear such nonsense, that's why I didn't invite you. But he invited you without asking me.
It must have been Donald's decision to allow our visit. Elizabeth seemed unforgiving, starting to complain about our son.
It's unbelievable to invite people home without my consent. He's so useless. I made him go shopping on purpose, thinking he would let you in if he was here.
Hearing the true feelings of my son's wife, I was dumbfounded. Taking advantage of our silence, she continued.
I'll tell Donald you saw the baby and left in a hurry. Please don't come again. It's a nuisance.
As Elizabeth was saying this,
Wait!
She ignored my voice and closed the front door. Then, I heard the sound of the lock being engaged. I realized I was clenching my fists tightly, shocked by what just happened in front of me. My husband didn't say anything, but it was clear he was angry. We could no longer think of Elizabeth, who had called our son useless and trampled on our feelings of celebration, as family. Frustrated, we decided to cut ties with her. After that, there was no contact from Donald for 6 months. Though we had cut ties with our eldest son, our younger son George introduced us to his girlfriend Stella, and they started visiting our home occasionally. Initially wary because of Elizabeth, I gradually warmed up to Stella, who always greeted me with a smile. Eventually, they got married. They even considered moving in with us, thinking about our future.
My mom and grandmother were very close. I hope to have a similar relationship with Madison,
Stella told me. I was so moved I almost cried. Seeing my reaction, my husband said,
We would love that.
And so, we decided to live together with our son and his wife. At the wedding, Stella wore my wedding dress. Both she and her parents
Thank you for letting me wear such a beautiful dress.
Thanked me. While feeling happy, I couldn't help but be disappointed with my eldest son and his wife's behavior. Elizabeth seemed to be in a bad mood at the celebration and ignored us throughout. Donald didn't do anything about her behavior. I was only worried if our younger son and his wife were upset by their attitude. But, to our relief, they looked happy after the ceremony.
Thank you for yesterday. It was a wonderful memory,
Stella said to me with a smile the next day. Later, Stella became pregnant, and I took over the household chores, thinking of her burden. But whenever I looked away, Stella would try to help.
Stella, please rest. I'll handle it. Madison, you're too protective. I'm fine with doing this much.
While having such exchanges, I felt happy living with my son, his wife, and my husband. That day, my husband and George went hiking together, and we were having a relaxed time. Then, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there stood Elizabeth and a young girl who had attended George's wedding. I hadn't been told anything at the wedding, but seeing the girl who resembled Donald, I was sure she was his child. The girl seemed not to recognize me and hid behind Elizabeth, looking scared.
It's been a while, Madison. Good to see you're well.
Contrary to her past behavior, Elizabeth greeted me politely. Then she started.
Well,
she began to tell her story.
Life has become tough recently, and I came to ask for support.
Support?
Yes. I quit my job because things weren't going well with my boss. But right after I resigned, Donald was fired. His salary was cut, and he was almost transferred to a subsidiary, so he quit too.
Donald tried to find another job but hasn't secured a stable position yet, leaving them both essentially unemployed. Elizabeth had suggested to Donald to ask us for support, but our son apparently refused. After quitting her job without consulting and finding out Donald was fired, Elizabeth called him useless. Donald seemed to be quite angry with her for that. Since then, Donald, who had always followed Elizabeth's lead, started to defy her.
That's why I came here directly,
she said with a troubled look. But all I wanted to say was, so what? From our conversation, It was clear that her attitude was the reason things didn't work out with her boss, and I could understand why our eldest son was angry with her. It was too convenient for her to seek help only when in trouble, especially after she caused us to sever ties. But she was desperate for my sympathy.
I even asked my parents, but they refused any financial help. You're the only ones I can turn to. We'll starve at this rate.
Elizabeth pleaded with teary eyes.
Please help us.
However, my heart remained unmoved. I refuse.
Why? It's all because Donald quit his job. As parents, shouldn't you feel responsible and help?
Responsible? You're adults, sort your own issues. You're the ones who cut ties, remember? We're saving money for Stella's pregnancy and our soon-to-be-born grandchild. We have no money to spare for you.
What? That's ridiculous.
Her weak demeanor changed instantly. The moment I refused, Elizabeth raised her voice.
Why support your younger son's wife and not help us?
At this moment, I was approached from behind.
Madison, are you okay?
Worried that I hadn't returned, Stella had come to the entrance. Seeing Stella, Elizabeth's face turned red with anger.
You're living together, too. That's not fair. I'm the wife of the eldest son. It's wrong for the wife of the younger son to move in. Get out.
Startled by the sudden shouting, Stella tensed up.
It's you who should leave this place.
I immediately stepped forward to defend Stella.
Stella proposed living together, considering our future. Unlike you, who only think of yourself. What? Just because I treated you a bit harshly, you favor her? Fine, if you don't support us, you'll never see this child again.
With those words, Elizabeth forcefully pushed a hidden girl to the front. Seeing the girl on the verge of tears, I felt something snap inside me. You're really the worst kind of person.
Huh? Say whatever you want. I've always disliked your preachy attitude. If you care about the child, don't use her as a tool. If you don't change your ways, we'll cut ties with you. Don't ever come to our house again. Don't joke with me, you miser.
Even after this, Elizabeth continued to fuss, using her daughter to sway us, but I never nodded in agreement. Though I thought to let her rant as she pleased, seeing the girl scared by Mom's yelling, I decided to take a drastic action.
If you stay any longer, I'll call the police. Leave quickly if you don't want to make a big deal out of this.
At the mention of the police, Elizabeth, who had been bustling about, stopped talking and left with a look of despair. Later, I heard that Donald and Elizabeth were struggling to find new jobs. Despite finding each other's presence intolerable, they couldn't afford to separate due to lack of assets, and so they were stuck together. They were always fighting. And their bad reputation spread in the neighborhood. They were even reported to the Child Welfare Office, concerned about the bad influence on the child. For the child's sake, my husband and I are considering taking her in. Several months later, Stella safely gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Since her parents' home was far away, Stella didn't go back, so I dedicated myself to supporting her. George and my husband dote on her.
When she grows up, the 5 of us will go hiking together.
They are excited about it. I am committed to doing everything I can to ensure this happiness continues.